We're continuing on Mishna Berurah, Shcharuch Orachaim, Siman Samach Aleph, Seif Dalet, the Tzadi Dalet Amud Bet of the regular prints of Mishna Berurah. Maran writes, Noagin likrot pasuk rishon bekol ram, kedei le'orer hakavana. The minhag is you read the first pasuk of Shema bekol ram. You read it bekol ram with louder voice in order to invoke your kavanah, because when you say something loud enough, that actually gets you to listen to what you're saying yourself. That's one of the reasons that the Gemara in Shabbat that we mentioned several times, Kufutet, Gemara says, by Amen Yeshem Rabba Bekol Kocho, and as we mentioned before, it's Bechol Kavanato, or also with loud voice, which has to do with Kavanah as well. The obvious, which shouldn't need to be said, is you're not yelling it out louder than the Shaliach Tzibur or in a way that stands out, because that, of course, would be a disrespect to the decorum of the Tefillah. That's a general halacha that you don't say any part of the Tefillah or Dvarim Shebikdusha louder than the Shaliach Tzibur. You don't answer Amen Yeshem Rabbah louder. You don't answer the Vayavor louder. You say it loud enough that you hear it. So again, you're not yelling Shema Yisrael on top of your lung in a way that everyone cannot have kavanah because you want to step on everyone to get to Olam Haba quicker. But sometimes people are in rush to get there. So that is, of course, given. This is not only in this area. Maran Chida writes, there's a mitzvah, the Gemara says in Daf Zayin, Masechet Brachot, it's a mitzvah to be ratz lidvar mitzvah, to run to dvar mitzvah, run to the shul, run to the shi'ur. And Maran Chida writes, of course you have to understand, it's not like running like a crazy man that people in the street look at this person and say, where did he come from? It has to be in a way that it's Kiddush Hashem. You see, you show the excitement, you show the bounce in your step, you show that you're a man with a plan, you're on mission, you're going to something exciting, but at the same time, it's with kavod, within boundaries of the society you live in. And here is the same concept. Maran writes in Seif, hey, Noagin liten yedehem al penehem b'kriyat pasuk. Rishon, the minhag is to put your hand on your face while saying the first pasuk of Shema, in order not to look at other things that will stop you from having kavanah during that pasuk. So that's why you put your hand, Maran writes, on your face. Now, many other Sfaradim, they have a very specific way of doing this, which indicates the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the name of Shakai, that the right hand that you put, they have the thumb, which has two parts, so therefore when you bend it, it looks like a dalet, and of course the three middle ones would be like a shin, and this one, when the pinky, when bent, looks like a yud. So when you do it like this, it will actually spell out shin, dalet, and yud, and that's how many do it. As we spoke about in the Chot Tefillin before, that there is a direct connection between the tefillah, between the tefillin, and between that name of shin, dalet, and yud, and hence we have in the tefillin also the shin, dalet, and yud, and even the straps of tefillin. The way we do it is the 3 and then the 4, which is dalet, and then 1, which is mispar katan of yud. Those are all indications that are nice, but you have to not lose track of the main point. The main point is you want your eyes to be closed, not to see other things during the course of saying the first pasuk, full kavanah necessary for that pasuk. And Mishna Berurah writes, Retzono lomar yad yamin. You're putting your right hand on your face, not your left hand, and the reason that you put your hand and you don't want to look at something else, at the same time, you want to close your eyes with your hand, not just close your eyes without the hand. And this is what the Ben Ish Chai writes, that you close your eyes and you don't put your hand on, that's a mistake, says the Beis Chai. There are those people within the Ashkenazi communities that they have a minhag, they don't really put their hand on, they just close their eyes and say, the Beis Chai says that's a mistake. And in the Tfilah of Shacharit, that you already are me'utaf betalit, the Beis Chai writes, the minhag is you cover your face not just with your hand, but you do it with the talit, and then you put your hand on it. So in other words, you're doing it more like this, with the talit covering it, not just with your hands. V'sarich la'asot ken ki minhagan shel Yisrael Torai. When you have a minhag, you don't change your minhag. These are things that a person sticks to, and you don't change from them, even the details. Now, a person that Rahman al-Islam is blind, do you have to also put your hand on your if the person can't see anyways? So the Beis Chai says even he should do it with his hands the way every single person does. And someone that has glasses, there are those who say you don't need to take them off. You could just cover with your hand on top of the glasses. And that was Obadiah's minhag as well. He did not take off his glasses necessarily. But Rabbi Tzvak Kaduri, he held that you should take them off. I mean, I don't think he wore glasses until the end of his life. He lived over 100 years, but I don't think he ever needed glasses himself. But he would say that you don't do it with glasses. You take them off. Again, sometimes you could do it without having to take them off. You could, depending on what type of glasses you have, you could just put your hands over them, and it won't be necessarily a problem. And the Beis Chai adds that you continue covering your eyes until you say the end of Baruch Shem Kavod Malchut Olam Va'ed, not just the Pasuk Rishon, but also the Baruch Shem. Now, how about a lefty? This that we say you use your right hand. How about if you're lefty? So Beis Chai writes that even though that his main hand is his left hand, that's his right hand basically. The left hand of everyone else is considered his right hand. Still, you should do it with the right hand, the conventional right hand, like everyone else. And this is again a machloket that we have come back to several times. That even though that Maran Shulchan Aruch, in many cases, by a lefty says that you should use your left hand, the stronger hand, whether it is by the item that you were saying about Ha'an, holding it in right hand versus left. For a lefty, Maran would hold that you hold in your left hand. For Lulav and Etrog, a lefty would hold the majority of the Arba Minim in the left hand, which would be the opposite of the other. But Al Pi Kabbalah, in all those places, right? Al Pi Kabbalah, the Mekubalim, right hand is always right hand, and you will use your right hand. Now, this is just another thing that we have alluded to, we have mentioned before. There is a Ma'arit Tzemach, really supported by a Meiri in Masechet Shabbat of Kuf Gimal, that even in Iter Yad, even a lefty should put on tefillin on their left hand, like a regular person. And this causes, of course, a lot of question, as we mentioned in the tefillin, for those who are lefties, according to the Kavachai and Beis Chai, maybe even though that the Karadin we paskin that you go after the hand that you write with, and that determines if you're considered lefty or righty, and therefore if you write with your left hand, you put tefillin on right hand. But nevertheless, after the tefillah, maybe you should switch and without bracha put it on your left hand as well, because of the Ma'arit Tzemach, Al Pi Kabbalah. And again, that is part of the same topic that, even the lefties would still be considering their right hand the main hand. So says Maran in Seif Vav, Sarich laharich bechet shel echad. You don't want to say had. You want to elongate the chet of echad a little bit. In order to have in mind that 8 different levels of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Malchut, of course, on earth, and then 7 levels of Rakia, Shamayim, however deep you want to understand that, of what those 7 represent and what they are and so on. But nevertheless, there is that element of 8 that you want to be mindful of when you say the word Ehad. Therefore, you elongate the Chet of Ehad a little bit in order to have those things in mind when you say it. Shelazer romes hachotarot shebeemsa gag hachet. When you have that part that sticks out in the way the het is written in a had, that is what it refers to. And also you elongate the dalet of a had. Amount of time that it takes for a person to think that Hashem is one and his oneness is absolute, and he commands all the aspects of the world, all 4 sides, so to speak, don't elongate it more than that, but enough that you should think of that. So for some people, it takes shorter than others, depending on how ready-minded you are. ויש נהגים להטות הראש כפי המחשבה מעלמת עבר ברוך הוא. There are those who have the minhag that they actually show this, demonstrate this thought with moving their head to the 4 directions. As they say Ahad, you see them move it up and down and to all directions. That's showing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one, and his oneness encompasses all aspects of creation. So again, that really has been the minhag of the Sfaradim as well, to demonstrate it physically like that. But as we mentioned before, those who do not know how to elongate dalet refuya should not do it, because then you mess up with a mitzvah d'oraita, and you should ensure that you have proper training before you start actually doing it in practice, taking the chance with a mitzvah d'oraita. Says the Mishna Berurah on that. L'harich bechet, katav Magen Avraham b'shem hamigdal oz. By the way, the aleph later on Shulchan says the aleph you should not elongate. It's only the head and the dalet, and the Beis Chai explains that aside from the fact that it's segol, ehad is not a serei, is a segol, which is a very small tune. It's not something long. Segol is a very short air, right? You have, of course, shva, which is the shortest. You have segol, which is also short, and then you have serei, which is longer. Throughout here is segol, and if you elongate it, it actually may chas v'shalom sound like a chad, which would mean it's not one. A chad, chas v'shalom, would be exactly the opposite of a had, right? So especially for Ashkenazim, this is a bigger problem, because they sometimes their serei is actually a. They pronounce serei. So by us it's just a strong e. By them is a. Right. So this is not a. This is not a serei. This is a segol. But if you elongate it, it may sound like a chad, and that chas v'shalom would mean exactly the opposite. So Beis Chai says, be careful with that. And again, as we mentioned, Maran is going to discuss it. So now Magen Avraham writes in the name of Migdal Oz that the het should be a shiur of shalish and dalet shiur shnei shlishim, right? 1/3 and 2/3. I mean, the dalet is twice as long as het over here. And again, the Ben Shchaim Kaf HaChaim, they explain that you cannot possibly elongate the dalet unless you say it in a professional way, that it's the loose rafeh pronunciation of dalet, which is sounds to the untrained ear, sound between zayin and dalet. That's how It is. Again, that needs training. And says the Mishna Berurah, there are those who say that you should not elongate chet and have all the kavanot on the dalit. And the Gra writes it like that as well. So that's why you see many Ashkenazim, they don't elongate the chet hadal. But our minhag is like Maran, not like the minhag Gaon, we do the het as well. You should pronounce it well, but there's nothing to prolong really, because there's not Teruah, there's Shema. You could. Well, the ayin is one thing that may or may not change it, but even the stress of the syllabus could make a difference, because, for instance, Shema, right, which is milera, the stress is in the seconds and the mem, means listen. Listen, O Israel, right? But if you say Shema, Shema means fame. It's a noun. Completely changes the meaning of the sentence. Right? Shema Shalomo. Actually, Rabbi Shlomo Amar has Shuvot, Sifret Shuvot, and he has Shema Shalomo. Some people, by mistake, especially those who know nothing about grammar, say, Yisrael Shelot Shuvot Shema Shalomo. Not Shema Shalomo. It's Shema Shalomo. It completely changes the meaning of the basic meaning of the wording. It says the Mishna Berurah, Machshava, Shema lo yikrotz be'enav. A person that's saying Shema should not hint to something, shouldn't point to something, shouldn't be communicating by sign language with other people, and so on. There, the pointing and the hinting is for a different thing, and it destroys your kavanah. But here, when you have the remizah, when you're moving your head to the four directions, that is not a hinting to someone else. That actually is strengthening your kavanah as you have your eyes closed and you're saying Ahad, thinking HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one in all aspects of the creation. When you physically demonstrate that demonstration actually helps the kavanah, does not take away from it. Therefore, that's not a problem. It's not comparable to what we say. You cannot move your head to hint to someone something and so on. Okay. Maran writes in next Seif, Yadgish bedalit shalote keresh. You should emphasize the dalet to be properly said, that chas v'shalom should not be heard as a resh, because if you say Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem chas v'shalom acher, that would be a different God, which indicates you have more than one. It's exactly opposite of what you want to accomplish by saying Hashem Echad, of the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zayin in Mishna Berurah Ot Chaf Aleph, it says Dalet velo yadgish yoter midai. Don't overdo it. Don't over stress the Dalet. Dalet nakud b'shva or b'sereh. Because if you try to do that, you end up saying Hashem Echad, which you just said there, and that's not. There's no shva there. There's no sereh there. There's nothing there. It ends landing on a silent note. And if you try to stress something that's silent, you can't help but say a tnu'ah, which is not there. So therefore saying had, you're playing with fire, because you do that a little bit more and you will become, and that's aside from the fact that echad, even that is really not so correct, because it's dalet refuya, it's not dalet degusha. So even if you don't end up saying a sereh or a sgol at the end, you may end up stressing the dalet in a way that becomes dalet degusha, which is also not something you want to do. What it means is You want to say it properly, that it's heard dalet, not resh. That's all we say. Say it in a clear way, and not in an ambiguous pronunciation, which leaves room for hearing it as a resh. Right? Lo yahtob b'chet v'lo yarich be'alef. So we said that you don't swallow the het and don't elongate the aleph, as we mentioned before. That's Seif het, and as Hashem the Seif tet, we will discuss, will continue in the days to come.